All right. Hello, everybody. This is Rick Wilson with Martin and Associates. Thanks for taking your time out today to join us this afternoon. Hopefully, things are getting off to a good start this year with you and your businesses. Today, we're excited to welcome our partners at ScanForce this afternoon. ScanForce specializes in optimizing warehouse management processes and also increasing inventory accuracy. So at the same time, they work seamlessly with your Sage 100 system. And we've worked with the folks at ScanForce for a number of years. I guess I would say a long time. So we're glad to have them today. A couple of housekeeping items. This session is being recorded. So we'll be getting those out to the folks that attend so you can revisit anything that you heard. And then as far as question and answer, go ahead and either use the chat or the Q&A, but we'd like to wait till the end and then we can go over all of those. So we'll be watching for those at the end. So we're lucky to have today from ScanForce, Brian Barry. So he's going to run the presentation. So I believe we're ready to go, Brian. So go ahead and take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Again, this is Brian. Very informal here, so please do ask your questions as we go. And if it's something that we're happy to be on that screen and the folks running the presentation want to interject, feel free to do so. And then at the end, of course, we'll have a mop-up and we'll answer any questions that you have. The big takeaway here is if you see something that strikes your fancy, something you'd like more information on, then reach out to your Martin rep about it, talk to them, and they can set up with me a one-on-one session so we can go through all of this in much greater detail and not talk about generalities like we will today, but talk very specific about your needs and your desires. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in. First, let's give you a little quick overview as to who we are, what we do. We've been around for a long time in the software world. We grew out of the Sage 100 world, so we've always been fully immersed in Sage 100. We integrate with some other Sage platforms as well, but Sage 100 is where we got our start, and that's where we've always been, that's where we've always lived. We have over 800 sites using our software, and at those sites, we have over 8,000 users on the platform. So by no means would you be a guinea pig. We've have 8,000 users banging away on it every day, and if there was something to be found, they would have found it by now. So you have that sort of security and safety blanket. That fourth bullet point down there, we'll spend just a moment talking about that we provide this both connected and disconnected environment. What does that mean? Well, we're used to working in a very connected environment because we all have a cell phone attached to us all the time. And at any moment in time, you can ask Google or Siri or whoever and find out any piece of any information about any subject in the world. Well, for us in the warehouse, all the time I get people that say, you know, Brian, my Wi-Fi is not great in the warehouse. Do I need to reinvent and redo my Wi-Fi before we start a project like this? And the answer is generally no, because we do operate in both a connected and disconnected environment. What that really means to you is, let's say during a receiving transaction, the first thing we're going to do is enter what's the PO number we're receiving against on the handheld. Well, we're going to go over the Wi-Fi, we're going to ping Sage, and we're going to pull all the information about that PO and store it locally on the handheld. Because after all, it is a mobile computer. It has memory and processing capabilities just like a PC or your phone. And so by doing that, you could now go back into the racks where you might have spotty coverage, or you could go out in the yard and jump up on a truck and do some receiving out in the yard where you don't have Wi-Fi, or even walk into the trailer on the back of a semi and you get that canyoning effect where you're inside the tin can, you lose connection to the Wi-Fi. That's okay. You can still go through the entire process, complete the receiving transaction, and we just need to reconnect to the Wi-Fi at the tail end to sync things up. So it's perfectly okay if you don't have the best Wi-Fi in the world. We can work with that. Okay. Now we do have this, what we call direct seamless communication with Sage. We run on the same server, the same box that Sage does, and we're tied directly into Sage. We add modules to Sage. We add fields within Sage. We add buttons on Sage screens. So we're very tightly integrated into Sage. And also with April coming up just around the corner, there'll be the new 2022 version of Sage that comes out. And I can tell you what happened last year when 2021 came out mid-March. 2 days later, we announced support for it. So we are very tightly integrated with Sage. We know exactly what's coming down the pipeline and we're ready for it. So when Sage is ready to upgrade, we're ready to upgrade as well. And the last thing that I'll mention here, if you're not familiar with MultiVed, don't worry, we're going to spend some time talking about MultiVed before we're done today. MultiVed is something that really never existed in the Sage world. From its inception, Sage had one field in the item code or item master that you could put a location, you could tie an item to a location in your warehouse. That's not really realistic in the modern warehouse where you might have a forward pick or a fast pick location for those fast mover items. And then maybe up on a top shelf, you have a full cases or maybe full skids sitting in the back of the warehouse somewhere. And today, your users just sort of know where everything is, which is great until they get COVID and they're out for 2 weeks. And not everybody that's taken their place knows where everything is. Wouldn't it be great if a tap of a button on a screen in the device in my hand, it would tell me exactly where everything is in my warehouse. I didn't have to memorize anything. And that's what our MultiVed does. So you may have seen it. It's called DSD/ScanForce MultiVed. So we partnered with DSD, which you may already know. They're a development group within the Sage world. They have multiple different enhancements out there for Sage 100. And we together wrote this MultiVed solution. Sage adopted it as their own. And there's two different flavors. There's a basic and an advanced. The basic's actually a free download. So if MultiVed is something you'd like to try out, talk to your rep there at Martin, and we can talk about the MultiVed basic. In fact, some of you may already be using that, even though you're not doing barcode scanning. If you're using MultiVed, that's our stuff. So we appreciate you being a customer. So let me get a little bit of background as to how we're built, and then we'll talk about the software itself. First of all, we designed this from the ground up to work with Sage 100. I told you before, that's where we grew up. The backbone of the platform that we developed our mobile application on runs natively on Android devices, Apple devices, and Windows. It's very powerful, it's extremely stable, and this same system, this backbone that our system is built on, it's used by numerous companies. You see FedEx uses it for their sorting facilities. That Black Horse carries over 100 drivers in trucks all over the country, or excuse me, over 1,000 all over the country that are using this same platform. So we'll be able to handle whatever throughput you try to throw at us. The system is geared to handle much larger applications. So don't think that you're going to, if there's a size question, don't worry about it. We can handle that. And to continue that theme from a speed standpoint, we're used to our phones. You click the button, and if it spins for more than 2 seconds, you probably have the same reaction I do. You want to throw it against a brick wall. So we're used to instant feedback and instant gratification. Well, with ScanForce, we do that. We actually tested it within Sage 100. We loaded up 1 million records, and we asked for one piece of data. And you could see the return rate was less than, just a fraction of a second. So literally milliseconds is what we're getting to with our return time on these. So no matter how many people you have, how many records you have in there, don't think you're going to tax the system. The system is built to handle it. Now we have the obligatory logo screen just to show you a few of our partners that we deal with. Starship is one that quite a lot of you probably just percentage-wise deal with in the shipping. I can tell you, we actually have a partnership in the work with Starship where we would have an integration between the two so that you can do Starship functions directly from our handheld while you're out there in the middle of the warehouse over your Wi-Fi. So that's something that's forthcoming, that's in the work between our two organizations. So that's some of the nerdnik stuff. Let me tell you a little bit more about what it really is. At our core, what we do is we extend Sage inventory functions out into the warehouse. Things that you do like receiving and shipping and transfers and issues and receipts, we extend those out onto the handheld via Wi-Fi. I've already told you that we do more than that. We add modules and fields and buttons within the Sage on the server side as well. But at our core, what we're trying to do is break the tether and allow you to walk away from the PC and actually go out to where transactions are really happening and input information at that point in time, the person's actually doing it. Okay. And the why is, well, we want to reduce and eliminate shipping errors. Think about what it cost you when you ship the wrong product. Okay. Not only what does it cost the value of your reputation in front of your client, but physically, what does it cost to recapture that product, to ship the right thing out, to pay for express shipping? Shipping has gotten a lot more expensive in recent days. So things like that are really the cost ratchet up. So if we can be more accurate with our inventory, then we can reduce a lot of those things. And updating inventory more timely. If you're using the classic pen and paper method where you scratch something down at the time of receipt, that piece of paper gets put in a bin in the warehouse, and then somebody takes that paper out of that bin, takes it in the office and puts it in another bin. Then somebody else gets it out of that bin, sits at their desk in front of Sage, and then they have to interpret the chicken scratch. Is that a 4 or is that a 9? And key it into Sage. Okay. This is how errors creep in. And also it's very timely. It costs a lot of time. And the entire time that knowledge exists only on paper and not in Sage, your salespeople are talking to your customers about stuff that really doesn't exist because it's not there. It's already been taken out of the system. So we want to cut that time gap down as little as possible. And I'll talk to you a little bit later about some of the ways that we can do that. Increasing accuracy, that's just at its core what barcodes do. And the validation, we validate all along the process to keep errors, I say, from creeping into Sage. Allowing you to do more things at more time and do more with less. In fact, we did a generic webinar that you can find on our ScanForce YouTube page just last week about doing more with less. Probably 80 or 90% of the people that I talk to on a daily basis tell us they have staffing problems. It's just a matter of the COVID world that we're all still living in. It's hard to get people off the couch to come to work. And having the ability to let fewer people accomplish the same amount of tasks by throwing a little technology at the problem is a big benefit. Labeling is something that we'll touch on. MultiVed, we're going to touch on in greater details. That last point, though, that's a big one. Lower the safety stock. Think about today. How much do you trust the inventory number that's in Sage? If your life depended on it and a customer called you and you said, Sage says there's 18 of them, so you can have 18 of them tomorrow. Do you really trust that number? Okay. So what most of our clients that we talk to, what they did, they built a safety stock into the system. They order extra materials because they know that at some point they're going to have a snafu and they're not going to have what they think they have on hand. So they build that safety stock in. Well, by using barcoding, by doing all the validations that we do throughout the process, we want you to be more comfortable with the number that Sage says. So hopefully you can reduce that safety stock number down. That's a hard number that you could put back in your back pocket at the end of the day. The bottom line here is by using barcodes, it's going to save you time and money. So how do we do that? Well, we have two different applications. Most of you came today to talk about warehouse management. So that's where we're going to spend the vast majority of our time. That's where we do things like shipping sales orders, receiving POs, all the inventory transactions where we move things from one place to another or from one location to another. Could be a location within our warehouse, could be a separate site in another city. We want to make things more efficient, and that's where we're going to spend most of our time. But we also have a mobile sales system that you may not even be aware of. Mobile sales, you can see here from this layout, it actually is built to run on an iPad in a tablet format. So think about being able to do sales orders and quotes and invoices, look at inquiries, all from the handheld, okay? And the people that might use that down here on the mobile sales side, again, think about a counter sales. If you have the type of situation where your customers walk up and they say, I want one of these and 3 of those, well, a counter sales rep, they have to go back and forth from the PC where Sage is, back into the racks, then go back and talk to the customer on the floor. Wouldn't it be nice if they could just carry Sage around with them in the palm of their hand? Well, that's what our mobile sales does. And think about field reps. If you have sales reps that go and sit down in your customer's office and they say, I want to enter an order. Well, the first thing that rep could do is look up and say, well, you have 18 grand sitting out on account. Let's talk about that first. That's the kind of thing that you want to be able to empower your sales team to be able to talk about with your clients. But then you can build a quote, you can build an order and take it right there. And if you have a real-time cellular connection on your tablet or a mobile hotspot on your cell phone, that could be in real time and go into the system. And even if it's not, As soon as they get back home and connect to Wi-Fi or back to the office or even at Starbucks, they can connect up and send that information back, and it becomes as real time as it needs to be for your operation. Okay. Now, back up to the top of the screen. I'll put mobile sales aside for a time. If that's something that interests you, talk to your Martin rep, and we can do a one-on-one talk about that, what your needs are there a little bit more later. But back to the top of the screen, what you really came for, talk about the warehouse automation. Whether you're a distributor, whether you do some assembly, some manufacturing, no matter what your area is, if you're using Sage 100, you could probably benefit from barcode scanning. And let me show you how we actually put that into play. We have 3 basic additions to our software, to our WMS. We call them fundamental, advanced, and premium. And I'll give you a quick breakdown. The fundamental on the far left, that's everything you need to run the basic warehouse. Receive goods in, ship goods out, do a physical inventory, and be able to transfer things around, be able to do issues and receipts. That inventory count, transfers, issued, receipt, that's cut right out of the Sage inventory playbook. So again, what we're doing is extending Sage functions from the PC out to the handheld via Wi-Fi. Okay. Now, for a lot of people, that's all they need. It meets all their needs. But we can also add some bells and whistles, some feature sets to that fundamentals. And that's when we move from fundamentals to this advanced version. The advanced version has some cool features. Let me give you a quick rundown. Remember, we talked about efficiencies and we talked about those administrative steps. We know that Sage is kind of a batch happy system. There's a lot of batches. Some of you that are listening in probably spend a good percentage of your day in and out of batches, looking at batches, processing batches. Well, would it be nice if you could just do away with that? When you do an inventory receipt on the handheld, when the person hits the button to send it, what if it just went right into Sage and it was live inventory? And now everybody in the organization could see the real picture of what's exactly here at this exact moment without having to deal with batches. That's what AutoPost does. It makes it a real-time system. Okay. And the cool thing about AutoPost is you get to pick and choose the transactions that you want to post. Maybe you want to do receipts, but you don't want to do transfers or issues. Okay. So there's a checklist where you go down and you say, I want to AutoPost this and this and this, but not that one and that one. So AutoPost is a really powerful tool when it comes to being more timely and more efficient. Now, staging of orders. This is something that's a little different on the shipping side. So over here in fundamentals, shipping assumes that one person will get a pick ticket, for instance, and they'll go into the racks and they're going to pull 7 items for this sales order, and they're going to put it in a box or put it on a pallet, shrink wrap it, slap a label on it, and boom, it's out the door. So one person, soup to nuts, they do the whole shipping process. With advanced, we add the ability to do it a little different. It's a 2-step process. You have a difference in a picker and a packer. So we have some customers that have a larger operation. They have maybe say 10 people. All they do is pick orders all day long. So they get a pick ticket, they go in the racks, they pick the 7 items they need for that order, and they're going to take it to what I'll call a packing station and drop it off. And then that picker is going to go back and pick the next order. So then we have a second individual that's a packer instead of a picker. And the packer is going to scan those items again. It's a double check to make sure we're shipping the right thing. And they're the ones that actually cartonize or containerize or put on a pallet and slap the shipping labels on there. So it's just a way of differentiating the functionality. You have some people that pick and some people that pack. It's a 2-step process. So with advanced, you can still do the 1-step shipping method, or we give you the option to add the 2-step method, the pick and pack. We also have this cool thing called directed picking. Now, over here in fundamentals, when you go into that sales order, it's going to say, here are the 7 items you need to go pick, which is great. You can go and grab those items off the shelf and put them in a box. But over here in advanced with direct picking, what we do is we say, based on the location where all these things are stored, I'm going to build a serpentine path for you to walk through the warehouse the most efficient way to gather those 7 items. For instance, if you have sort of an aisle A, aisle B, aisle C methodology, you might say, well, there's 2 things on aisle A, so let's walk down aisle B. There's nothing, walk down aisle A and get those 2 things, but there's nothing on aisle B, so let's skip over to aisle C and get something there, and then we'll loop around to aisle D. So it's a way of letting this computer do a little bit of the work for you. It's like having Google Maps for your warehouse. It's going to tell you exactly the most efficient path to walk to find those items and put them in the box. Okay. We also have some cool dashboards that will give you a lot of metrics as to, things that are shipping, like number of orders that have shipped today, number of line items that have shipped today, total quantities, things like that. So you can sort of gauge who's doing what, who's being efficient, maybe who's not. In fact, I can tell you we have a couple of customers that have actually mounted large screen TVs up over the shipping office, and they display the dashboards in real time. So everybody in the warehouse can see who's done what today, who's processed the most orders, who's processed the most line items, that sort of thing. So sometimes that sort of motivation is it's a good motivational tactic. And we also, if you're not doing auto post, we give you some batch management functionality. It's a little bit better than what Sage has inherently with the way that we can handle batches and move things around. Okay, so we have those two functions. We have the fundamentals and the advanced. Those are different feature sets contained within our system. Now, to either of those, we can add MultiVed. Okay, if you remember we talked before, we talked about the DSD/ScanForce MultiVed basic and advanced. There's two different versions. The basic, the one that's the free download, that will bolt onto our fundamentals package. And now when you're doing receiving, you can say, I'm putting it physically in this location as opposed to another location. So you can have multiple places in the warehouse where inventory items can exist, the same item existing in multiple places. Okay. But when we add MultiVed to advanced, it's this MultiVed advanced over here. It's a lot more than just things living in more than one place. We have these auto allocation rules that come in. And I'll talk a little bit more about allocation but basically it's a way of telling the Sage when you want to allocate specific inventory to a specific order. And when we add the MultiVed onto advanced, we go ahead and call it premium because it really becomes its own animal. It's a whole separate product that has all this MultiVed logic, all the advanced MultiVed features built in. So two basic feature sets, fundamentals or advanced, and then we can add MultiVed to fundamentals in the basic form, or we can add the MultiVed advanced and it becomes this premium package. Okay, so let's drill in and talk a little bit more about MultiVed and what it does. Obviously, the ability to store and track things in more than one bin. So when you're looking at your inventory maintenance, your item inventory inquiry, you can drill down on a warehouse and it will expand out and show you this view. So I can see all these different bin locations, aisle A, rack 1, shelf A, aisle B, rack 1, shelf A, and I can see exactly what's there, okay? Even that these, I've got 12 of them sitting in a staging location waiting to be shipped out. It gives you much better visibility of your inventory. Where's my overstocks? Where's the full cases? As again, it's the kind of thing you don't have to rely on memory anymore, okay? It's a lot more accurate. But when we get down to these auto allocation rules, the allocation rules, especially if you're doing things like lots and serials where there is specific inventory that you need to allocate to an order. I want this serial number, or it has to come from this particular lot. But even if you're not using lots and serial, there's a timing issue. When do you want it to allocate? Do you want to allocate as soon as the order is entered? Or maybe when we start picking it, okay? There's all these business rules that exist behind the scenes. One of the other auto allocation options could be first in, first out, okay? If you want to run that way. Another one could be if I have 3 sitting in one bin and I have 50 sitting in another bin. Well, if I need 18, maybe I don't want to go to the bin that only has 3. Take me to the one that has plenty so I know I only have to go to one bin, okay? So there's all these business rules that exist. And by no means are you on an island. We're not just going to dump this in your lap and say, go figure this out for yourself. Part of the implementation process, you work with our implementation team. They walk you through developing these business rules. What makes the most sense for your application? And then we go in and we plug it all into the system so that these allocation rules will begin to start running. Other things that we can do, like directed putaways. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the minutia of this, but if MultiVed sounds at all interesting to you, talk to your Martin rep. They can talk to me. We'll set up a one-on-one and I'll go through all this with you, listen to all your hopes and dreams, and we'll figure out the different aspects of our system that will work in your specific environment, okay? Now, in addition to which version do you want, the fundamental or advanced, and do you want MultiVed, we have a couple of modules that you can choose from as well. The most popular by far is label printing. Probably 98% of our clients use labeling. We do have a few people that are lucky enough to say that when everything comes into us, it comes in a box with a barcode pre-printed on the cardboard. Good for you. But for the rest of us, we're going to print labels, okay? So at the time of receiving, we can print these labels, and literally if you say I'm receiving seven labels will just magically spit out of the printer, and you can slap them on right there while you're handling them and putting them away on the shelf, okay? There's several different examples of label types here, including this 2D label, which is really cool. In a 2D label, we can encode many pieces of information. In fact, as the story goes, we can encode the entire Gettysburg Address in the size of a postage stamp using a two-dimensional barcode, okay? So if you're using lots or serials, wouldn't it be cool if this had the item number, the quantity that's in this case, the lot number, all embedded in there? So with one barcode scan, you could populate 2 or 3 screens worth of information in our application just with one barcode scan. And the best part is not that it's so fast. The best part is that it is so accurate, because the barcode never lies. When you scan the barcode, you know exactly what you're getting, okay? So we can print these at the receipt of goods. If you're doing any sort of manufacturing, like bill of materials, whatever, at the time of production of that finished good, we can print a label for it. You can print labels at various stages in the process. Things like packing lists, make those stickers come out. Here's the guy that's actually wearing one on his hip. Okay, so if you want to be that mobile, you can have a complete Wi-Fi mobile printer that you never have to leave the work area to go get the labels wherever the printer is. The printers work via Wi-Fi, so wherever you've got electrical outlet, you could have a printer. But this guy over here, the mobile belt printer, gives you true mobility. Okay, all right. So another module that we can talk about would be manufacturing. Now, most of you are probably distributors, but for those of you that do some manufacturing, whether you're running bill of materials or work order or production management in Sage, we have a corresponding module on the handheld that will do that very same thing. So you can do either prompt for components or backflush. And again, if you're into manufacturing, you probably know what these mean, so I won't belabor that point. But some of the cool things we can do if you're in production management, which is the way Sage is pushing the world to sort of phase out work order and go to production management, is we can do labor tracking right there on the handheld, okay? Not going somewhere else and entering it, not walking to a PC or going to tell someone. While you're actually doing the material issues and the completion entries, you can enter your labor right there on the handheld. It's built in, okay? So much more efficient than the old paper way. And another thing that we can do to give you even more efficiency, we have this brand new make to order module, which is one of the newest things in our lineup. When you enter a sales order for an item that you know you have to produce, we can have it automatically generate a production management work ticket directly from sales order entry. It can be automatic, okay? So that's, again, something, if you're into manufacturing, please let your Martin rep know. They'll talk to me and I'll walk you through all these steps to show you all the screens in a one-on-one presentation, okay? So once we pick the feature set we want, are we going to do multi-bin? Are we going to do labels? Do we need to do manufacturing? We can even get more granular than that. Off to the side, we have over 40 enhancements that allow you to really customize ScanForce for your specific needs, okay? These are, think of them like an a la carte menu where you can say, I need this, but I don't need that, okay? Probably half of our clients have enhancements and other half of them, the base WMS meets their needs. But this is really where you can customize and custom tailor the system to work for you. Things like in receiving, wave receiving, I'll talk about wave picking when we get to the next one. Let's talk about RMA receiving. So if you're using the RMA module within Sage for return material authorizations, well, we have a corresponding RMA module on the handheld that allows you to receive RMAs on the handheld. It flows directly back into Sage. If you do a lot of container receiving, we have a whole app devoted to nothing but handling containers. Containers are a huge hot button issue right now. So if you do containers, you're probably groaning right now because you know that thousands and thousands of dollars of your inventory are sitting on a ship out in the middle of the port right now. You can't even get the container. But when it gets there, we want to be able to process it the most efficient way possible. So we built this container receipt management app to do that. Now we have a lot of enhancements built around shipping, okay? Wave picking is one of them. Wave picking is a way that we're able to group orders together. Let's say you have a customer, you have 10 orders for them and you're trying to build a truckload to go out. Well, you can group those 10 orders on a wave together, assign them to an individual. So when they look at their handheld, they can say, oh, here's what I have to do today. I have these 10 orders I have to pick. And again, using things like directed picking, things like that. We can group them together. We can very efficiently pick those orders and stage them together because they're going to ship together. Or maybe since you're trying to build a load, you might be able to go directly from the rack to the truck. By using wave picking and grouping them together, we're trying to give you methods to be efficient. Another use is UPS. If you do UPS shipments, and you know the UPS truck shows up at 4:30 every day, you can look at your orders at the beginning of the day and say, I've got 7 orders that have to go via UPS. Well, let's put those 7 UPS orders on a wave, assign them to an individual, and say, get it done by 4:30. That way, there's never a question of, do we have everything ready when the UPS driver shows up? Okay. Pick to pallet is a fun one because I always use the example of you go to the grocery store and you're buying bread and canned goods. Which one do you want to put on the bottom of the bag? Okay. They better not put the bread on the bottom because we know what's going to happen. So pick to pallet, same basic philosophy in your warehouse. Let's say you have a new person. The new person doesn't know that item A is big and bulky and heavy and needs to go on the bottom. And item B is light, dainty, fragile, needs to go on the top of the pallet. So we give you the ability to code your inventory in such a way that we tell this brand new user that doesn't really know your inventory yet how to build the pallet. Pick this item first and put it on the bottom, then pick this item and put it on the top because it's more delicate. And then we can extend that out to the next thing, which is license plating, also known as pallet tracking. Pallet tracking gives the ability to essentially create a location in your inventory and give it a number, a license plate, and we know everything that's on it. So let's say coming out of production, or let's say you're building up an order to go to a client and you're waiting on some stuff, you go ahead and you build a couple of pallets, shrink wrap them, print a license plate label and slap it on the outside. Then a week later, when the final stuff comes in, when you go to ship it, all you have to do is scan the license plate number and we know everything that's on that pallet and you don't have to touch 83 different barcodes again. Okay, just scan the one and the system knows what's there. You can ship a whole pallet at a time that way. Okay, so we give you a lot of ways to really customize the system for your specific needs without overspending on things that you don't need. Okay, and at the end of the day, if we get to the point where, excuse me, we need to get really specific, we always have to be able to do custom programming. Okay, so if you have something really unique, we can throw a little technology at the problem and make it work for your very unique situation. Okay, and finally, we want you to understand that our system is built with the user in mind. It was built from the ground up with Sage 100. It's very easy to understand. The screens are intuitive. You never have to worry about what you're going to do next. From the user's perspective, you always look at the top in this light gray box. Your eyes will always go to the top, the light gray box. That's the only piece of information we're asking from you now. This is a put away function. All we're asking is it's coming from this generic receiving dock and it's going to what location. And we even tell you what the primary location is. This is an example of a multi-bin screen, okay? So folks, this is as complicated as it gets. This is multi-bin and it's still this simple. Where are you gonna put it? Well, here's the primary location. I can even hit this flashlight right here and it would show me every location in my warehouse where this particular item exists. Okay, so we do that because we want the screens to be very simple. We want the learning curve to be minimal. And if I showed you how to do a receiving transaction, chances are you could pick it up and go in and do a shipping transaction without a whole lot of training because the screens look the same. Even up here at the top, these 2 buttons, we have a paper airplane and a clipboard. If you ever have a situation where you're in the middle of a transaction, somebody says, hey, come help me for a minute. Well, it's 20 minutes before you get back to what you're doing. If you wonder, oh, shoot, what's the last thing I did? Well, you can always hit the clipboard and it will tell you everything that you've done thus far and you know what you have to do next. And then when you're done, you hit the paper airplane and we send it back over to Sage and we're done. And with that, we're really done. Okay, so that's in a nutshell. That's what ScanForce is, what we do at our core. We extend Sage inventory functions out in the handhelds via Wi-Fi, and we automate processes. We validate along the way, and we try to make your life so much easier by stopping problems before they ever get a chance to creep into Sage. That's really our main goals. Okay? So now I'll turn it back over to our folks at Martin and to see if they've got any Q&A that have come through yet.
Yeah, but thanks a lot, Brian. That was very comprehensive. Good stuff there. And like you said, if any of this rings true with things that you want to look at closer, just let the person that you work with at Martin Associates know, and we'll start working on it. As far as a couple of questions, there are a few here. Came in through the host. Let's see. How does the purchase of the software work? I think this is related to like subscription versus.
Okay, sure.
Do you guys offer? How do you guys offer that?
Sure. The answer is probably all the above. So we do have a subscription model if you want to go that way, but I will tell you the vast majority of clients that purchase WMS tend to make it an upfront one-time purchase. Okay. Through doing it through a subscription, understand that the hardware, the scanners, the printers, and the implementation is still an upfront one-time fee, and then the software and the licensing becomes a subscription. Okay, so most of our clients do an upfront one-time purchase, and that could be stroking a check, or it could be done as a lease. And I'm a real big fan of leasing, because with a lease we can do it. And we don't do the lease ourselves. We work with a leasing company that works in this auto ID industry with barcoding stuff. So we can do it in 24 months, 36 months, 60 months. 36 is kind of the most common, but we can even build all 3 years of the support and maintenance in and spread those payments out over 36 months. So
Gotcha.
you really start to get the benefit before you have to pay for the system.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Thanks. One's in here, or one of the questions here is, how easy is it to upgrade when you have to upgrade? I guess that goes along with, upgrading with your Sage 100 system as well.
Sure. Well, first of all, if you're on maintenance, there is no upgrade cost for us. Okay. So if the question is, I'm moving from 2020 to 2021 or 2022, there's no fee for that. Okay. You just let us know, we remote into your system, update a few things, and you're good to go. Okay. Now, if your question is, if I'm upgrading from like fundamentals to advanced, or from fundamentals to premium, that sort of thing, that's a very easy upgrade also. Okay. So if in that case, all you do is pay the difference between the two. So if you pay X number of dollars for fundamentals, okay, and then a year from now you want to upgrade to advanced, all you do is pay the difference between the cost of advanced and fundamentals. That way you never lose the value of what you've purchased.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that will stay true. Yep. Okay.
Great. There's one that's a little bit more detailed here. So physical inventory is a big problem. So they're asking, how does it work with the scanners?
Well, the first thing I'll tell you is sort of an industry agnostic statistic. Okay, it has nothing to do with ScanForce, has nothing to do with Sage. This is just distribution systems in general. When you add barcoding to a system, the expected labor savings is somewhere between 70 and 85%. And let that sink in for a moment. That's a huge number. Okay.
Yeah.
But again, that's nothing to do with us. That's just generic adding barcoding. Okay. Now, obviously, our physical inventory with barcode scanning is built specifically to work with Sage 100. Okay. So you can literally go out, scan an item, there's 7 of them. Scan an item, there's 15 of them. And when you hit the paper airplane, it flows back into Sage. And there's no more count cards, no more clipboards, no more sitting down and hand keying hundreds and hundreds of entries. They just magically appear back in Sage. All you do is hit the printer icon to print the reconciliation report. And I'll give you a real life example. We had a client that signed with us last year. They did their first year in inventory back over the holidays just a couple months ago. And they normally said it took them 3 weeks to do a full inventory and a reconciliation. The very first time they did it on our system, they cut it by 50%. And they said, we still didn't have everything set up the way we want, and now we know a lot better about what we need to do. It'll get better next time.
Yeah, there is, I mean, our clients have done the same thing with making the switch to the handhelds within physical counts. So, all right, those are the questions that I had out here. So I guess maybe we'll wait for a few more seconds in case anything else pops up here. Doesn't look like it. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your attention. Hopefully you learned a lot about ScanForce and how it can help you manage your inventory better, get more accuracy. And Brian, great job. That was easy to understand and you hit all the points.
Appreciate the opportunity.
So, yeah. So thanks again, Brian, and thanks for everybody attending. And like we said, we'll be sending out emails with a link to the recording and let us know if we can help. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks again, Brian.
Thank you.